All right, so now we have a object. We have the B that we set up, that we have a position, a size. We have this offset use Perlin noise. We are displaying it. The B is responsible for updating its position. Now I actually want to take this and let's abstract this out to make, instead of just one B object, let's make multiple. In order to do that, we're going to need to use an array, and we're going to need to use loops. Now, arrays and loops go really good together. We've already played with arrays to be able to have multiple things. Loops go good because we can go through each item of that array. So what we're going to do is that we are going to create an array. Let's just call it B's. Usually when you do an array, you put something that's going to show multiples of. And then we need to put it in here. B's is an empty array. Now I can push these B's on there. So let's go ahead and do this. Once we have an array and then we create a B, so I'll do it down here after I created this B. So I can minimize this so we can see it. I can do B's.push. And then inside of here, I could push that B. That's the object that I'm putting on my B's array. Then instead of drawing like this, because this I'm just calling the B itself, I can call, let's say, instead call the items in the array. Call the items in the array and have them run. So I may not know exactly what each item is, but I could say B's, let's go through the list, because basically what we want to do is we want to find each item in the list. So I could write B's at position 0 dot update and B's at position 0 dot display. Okay. This is one way to do it. It's not an advantageous way. Now when I run this, I have no difference than me just calling the B's, because I'm calling the item in the array, or the element in the array, I'm calling the first one. Now what I really want to do is I want to set this up so that I could call every item in the array. So there's two ways to do this. And I will show. One of them is to use a for loop. For loops are good for setting up things and they're good for iterating through a list. Now, if I know that I'm going to do the same thing for every item in the list, because I will go through this more, we're going to use it to set up. Doing a for of loop is a way that I can execute a loop that operates on every single item that's in that list to pull from. So the difference is I'm going to use the keyword for. I got to give it some temporary variable name. I use the keyword of, and then I give it that list, and then I can do stuff from it. So what I would write would be for, and let's just give it a temporary variable. So I could call it let, how about I call it temp B of. So this is just a temporary variable that will only exist locally inside of this for of loop. And then I can call it of B's. So in here, now instead of me having to say something like B's at position 0, I can just say temp B dot update and temp display. Okay, so this is the other way to write it. Let me comment this out. That way was just for getting a specific item in the array. This one is going by getting every item in the array. Okay, now when I rerun, I'm going to see the exact same running. This is still working. The other way to do it is the for loop. In the for loop, really, I'm giving it a temporary variable where I'm starting at, my condition of when I want to kick out of the loop, and then how I'm iterating or decrementing. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on that. Okay, so loop. Okay, so let's, instead of creating the B here in the setup, let's create it where we're doing it with the mouse pressed. Okay, so I am basically just going to cut that stuff out of there, out of my setup. I'm going to put it in a mouse pressed function. Just so we see that there's other ways that we can do this. Okay, now here I can have this B that I'm creating. And since I actually don't need to use the B, I don't need to hold on to the B at all. I don't even need this because I'm just going to put them in the array and then I'm done with it. So this can be temporary. Okay, so with it like this, because I have that display that's already going through every item, and at the very end of that mouse pressed, I am pushing that B onto that list. Now, when I click, I get multiple Bs, but I'm not getting them where I'm clicking. I'm just getting them where they're starting at that center point. So we're going to make some changes to this. So instead of this being width divided by 2, height divided by 2, we're going to say mouse X, mouse Y. Okay, our offset, we could leave that. We're just going to keep checking everything. Okay, everything else is fine for us now because we only made that subtle change. It is mouse X, mouse Y. Why is that not creating exactly where we are? All right. We got an issue with the positioning. Mouse X, mouse Y. I suspect it's right here. Rerun. Nope, it's not that one. It's so that's offset. It's not putting it exactly where we want. If I comment this out, just so we can see, that's where I'm clicking. But with me adding that offset, it's starting with movement to begin with. So I'd have to make some changes on that. Right now we just have a wiggle. Because we're going -2, +2, it's like they're buzzing around. Okay, I'll leave the offset off right now because I don't feel like figuring this out, but I challenge you guys to try to play around with this to get it where it's clicking and still using that offset. What I want to do though is I want to play around with the display. We have a bunch of Bs. I'd like them to start doing interesting things. So the first thing that we would need to do is we got to actually change how we're displaying. You guys have not learned this yet, but to organize our code, we are going to want to start using push and pop whenever we are trying to move things or display things to keep stuff organized. Okay, so if I use push pop, then the image mode is only working for inside with this bees.display, which means that I could use a different background image for all of my stuff. Now, I also want to make a quick change. I want to have some of these Bs flip back and forth, okay? Which means I'm going to add an extra variable in here. We have a position, we have a size, we have the offset, and let's put, how about we put F left for facing left, and we will put random, and we'll create a array that just holds true and false, okay? So I want this basically just to sign if they should be facing left or not. All the Bs right now when we click, they're facing left. Okay, so in here, we have changed the center and everything for the image. Let's also go in how we're displaying this. So we're going to, now that we have push and pop, we're going to change our origin. We're going to use translate. We'll use this dot pause dot x, this dot pause dot y. That will be our new center for our B, which means that I can say this image of the B is drawn not at all to the left or the right or up or down of the B. So 0, 0. It now should look the same. Okay. But now, because I have translated, I can write some interesting things. I'm going to write a conditional, and I'm not going to go through it this time, but basically conditional is how we can branch our code. So I want to say if if this dot f left, so that will return true or false. It's looking up. Okay, now conditional is looking for a true or false statement. That's the question that I'd ask, and then it's going to execute something. So in here, I want to flip it on its x-axis. So if f left is true, I want to do nothing. So we can have our scale at 1, 1. Now, if it's not true, then I want to flip the scale so I can have it facing the opposite way. So I'm going to say -1, 1. Now let's go ahead and run this. Look, there we got a B that's facing the other way, and this is completely randomized. And it's set up where we can run as many B's as we want. Okay, now the other way to write a loop outside of this, okay, we could choose instead, so I'm going to just play around with this. This is going and doing a of loop here. Here we have where the B's are being created, but they're being created whenever we press the mouse. If I wanted to put this inside of a for loop, I could have when I press so right now I have it where I'm clicking it and it's doing it. I could give it a random position. So I'm going to make one more change just to show that we can have it do random stuff. I'm going to make this where it is giving me a random all the way up to the width of the screen. And then this is going to be a random all the way up to the height of the screen or the canvas. So that's how it's going to create. It's still doing the random. It's still going to translate and have them display left or right. But now inside of here, I'm going to create this B inside of a for loop. So when I actually click on the mouse, I want it to create 10 B's at a time. So I'm going to write this for loop. Now this for loop is broken up into 3 parts separated by semicolons. The first part is a variable that is showing me where I'm starting in my loop because I'm going to be basically counting up or counting down. So I'm going to say I want to start at 0. Now this is a local variable that only exists inside this for loop. I can say when my condition where it's no longer true, which will kick me out of the loop. And then this would be what am I doing with that variable so that I'm counting and I'm not stuck in this endless loop. So it basically breaks down into initialization, condition, they call it afterthought. Okay, this is where we start, this is what we're checking against, and this is what we do after we finish a loop and we have not met that condition and we're getting ready to go into another one. Okay, so let's say I wanted to run this 10 times. I'm going to just use the variable index. I'm going to say index is equal to, how about 1? Normally we count from 0, but that's fine. We'll go from index is 1, and we want to keep going until index is less than or equal to 10. And we're going to go by index is increasing by 1 only. So that's the plus plus. Okay, so inside of here, this is what would loop 10 times. Well, what do we want to loop 10 times? We want this to loop 10 times. So I'm going to move it in here. So now, if we're looking inside of the loop, let me minimize. This right here, I'm going through, index is 1. We are creating a B, putting it at a random position, loading it on that list. We finish the code blocks. Then we're coming here. Is index less than or equal to 10? Yes, it is. All right, well, index is now increasing by 1, so index is 2. And then we come back here. We redo it. We keep doing this until index is no longer less than or equal to 10. So now, when I run this, I just created 10 B's. There's 10 more, 10 more, 10 more, 10 more, 10 more, 10 more, 10 more. Okay? That is using loops and arrays makes it so we can do a lot of stuff without adding a lot of code. If I was simplifying and looking at in terms of variables, I have very few variables. I just created an array. I'm just going through every item of that array and calling the functions for it. And then here, 3 lines of code. What I said, we push it in the array and we're doing that loop. That's how we can create multiple stuff. So I could do this too. Now, if you do this too high, you will crash your system, so make sure you save your stuff ahead of time. But there's 100 Bs. 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700. See how it's starting to slow down? Because we are browser-based right now. All right, that's all I got for this video walkthrough. I'm going to call this B1 walkthrough. Actually, we'll do it B2 walkthrough, and then we're going to call it with arrays and loops. Okay, make sure that you're duplicating your other one so you have it to go off of. That's all I got. Good luck. Have fun.